Okay, so let's start. So if you remember in the last session, I told you that we'll discuss about SAP Activate methodology. Okay, so before we start with what exactly is SAP Activate, as you already are aware of most of the new things which are available for HANA. So whenever you will be going on to the project or whenever your sales team is discussing with the customer new SAP S4HANA implement. See,
Hi, Gaurav.
yes, Shri.
There's a lot of background noise coming.
Is it okay?
It's not. It's not clear. Your voice is very. It's a breaking voice.
Okay, just give me a minute. Let me just disconnect and connect again. Hello, is it okay now?
Yes, Gaurav. It is clear.
Okay. Okay, so I was talking about that if your customer or let's say your sales team who is going to discuss about the SAP S4HANA new implementations or maybe the system conversions, whenever your sales team is in discussion with the customer, as you know, this S4HANA licensing cost is more than ECC. Okay, and every company, any company, like if they are investing in something, they want that the value is realized as soon as possible. Right. Even in ECC also, I'm not saying in ECC that was not the case. In ECC also, when we were implementing SAP ECC system, customer was always that he wants to realize the benefits, he wants to use SAP system as soon as possible. So in ECC also, whenever we were, let's say, going for new implementation kind of projects, so in new implementation, uh, depending upon the customer, some of the projects were taking 6 months, some of the projects were taking more than 1 year. It was all dependent upon the customer and customer to customer, and also the consulting company, and based on the approach that we go with the SAP implementations. Now here also same thing applies. So if a customer wants to go for the new implementation or the system conversion, based on the approach what he's taking, based on the amount of complicated processes they have, based on the data they are using in their current system, the project duration may go up to more than 6 months or more than 1 year. It all depends upon customer to customer. But obviously, customer is always going to chase you that as I already invested the amount in this particular technology now, I want to realize the benefits as soon as possible. So that is the main motive of SAP to come up with something new. I'll give you the example. Let's say when we talk about a system conversion project. So your customer is using SAP ECC system and they want to migrate to SAP S4HANA. Now, if you go to the customer and tell them that, okay, to complete this project, we will take, let's say, 1 year or 2 years of time, they will definitely think about it. Like before deciding whether they want to go for SAP S4HANA or not, they will take some time and they will see, oh, even if we are investing today, it will take us another 1 or 2 years to actually get the ROI, like start using the system. Okay, so which is the main drawback? Drawback in the sense, which is the main concern point, because many customers, even if they are interested in going for SAP S4 HANA, if you tell them the project timeline will be 1 year or 2 year, again, for some of the customers, even 1 year is good duration. Let's say if big companies who already have a lot of complicated processes, 1 year can be okay for them. But on the other hand, for the small companies, if they ask them that it will take 1 year to realize the benefit, they will say, "Oh, this is taking so much of time, so maybe we can think." And in the end, what will happen is there will be less customers who will be interested to move to SAP S4. So what SAP needs to do is they need to make sure that when they are coming up with a methodology, because we were using SAP methodology till now, right? ASAP methodology. So the pressure was on SAP that how they can minimize the steps in the implementation or system conversion process and try to minimize the timeline which is required to implement a project. Right. So what they have done is they again revisited SAP methodology and they found that there are some areas which can be avoided. So ultimately, if you avoid some of the activities, you will be saving the time in the project. That is the main motivation of SAP Activate methodology, to reduce the timeline, to eliminate the processes which are not adding much value. One thing. Second thing, this SAP methodology, when it came at that particular time, the new technological concepts like agile, like scrum master, these were not very popular. Nowadays, whoever is working on any kind of IT project, they want this new concepts like agile way of performing the business, the scrum master, which is again another concept which will ultimately, what I can say, improvise the way in which the project is carried out. So all these things also needs to be incorporated in your methodology. That was the another pressure. So one was to minimize the time, and second was to bring on these new concepts into our methodology. That is the reason SAP has came up with a completely new methodology now, which is eliminating the processes in SAP, and it is also adding some values in the form of some concepts which are used like agile, scrum master, even from project management point of view, PMP concepts. So that is the reason why SAP has came up with this new methodology. Now, is SAP Activate only methodology? See, if I talk about SAP was definitely a methodology, because SAP based business practices were definitely provided. I'm not saying in ECC you are not getting the base business practices. Even today, ECC also, if you want to activate the base practice content like sample company codes, country as a sample company codes, so they are still available in ECC also. So SAP base practices are not new. But SAP base practice has nothing to do with the SAP methodology. SAP methodology was to implement a project, and base practices were separate component. Now, all these things they are bringing together. When they say SAP Activate, it is not only methodology, It includes the methodology, it includes the content related to the best business practices, and guided configuration. So we'll talk about all these 3 points, what exactly this means. So methodology, as you know, the way in which you carry out a project. So what are the different phases in the SF methodology? Similarly, there are different phases in the activate methodology, which is trying to eliminate some of the processes. Which processes we'll discuss. When you talk about base business practices, it means, let's say if I give you SAP system and I ask you, you already know the processes, you configure the system according to my requirements. Okay, so if you are starting from scratch, like you create a company code, like the same way as we have done in our implementation scenario, right? We started with doing everything from scratch. Okay, so if we follow the same approach, if we do everything from scratch, it will take more time because the once we understand the business requirements from the customer, if we start everything from scratch, it will take more time because we are doing each and every activity from scratch. So how SAP can help us in making sure that the time which we need to realize in the realization phase can come down? So they have provided some best practice content, same as in ECC. In ECC also, if you don't want to start from scratch, you can copy from the country templates, right? So whenever you are creating a new company code, instead of starting from scratch, you copy some sample company codes and then make the adjustments wherever required. Same way for S4HANA also, SAP has provided the best practice content, which is available as a part of Solution Manager or Solution Builder we'll talk about. Okay, so using this best practices, you can bring on some sample company codes in your system, and then normal way, when you want to create any new company code, instead of starting from scratch, you copy it from the sample company codes and then proceed to make the adjustments. The what are the base business practices? Base business practices are the standard set of processes which are recommended by SAP to follow. So for example, if I talk about procure to pay, so according to the standard procure to pay, first of all, in your procurement process, the purchase requisition should be placed. Once the purchase requisition is placed, you should ask for RFQ. So when the vendor is sending you RFQ, you need to create that quotations, you need to convert that quotations into purchase order, you need to do the gate entry. This is the standard base practice which is provided by SAP, which includes the releasing procedures for PR, which includes the releasing procedures for PO. So when this is a standard process, now most of the companies from the procurement point of view will follow at least 80% of the process. Okay, so when 80% of the process is same in each and every customer, why should we start everything from scratch? Whatever is available in standard SAP, will copy that, and the 20% changes, whatever are recommended by customer, we will perform accordingly. That is the whole idea of the base practice content. What is guided configuration now? Now this guided configuration is something which was never available in ECC. As a consultant, when you are asked to configure anything, the only place you go is SPRO. You go to SPRO, you have different folders for different modules. Like if you want to configure financial accounting, you want to configure materials management, everything has a separate folder. Even from integration point of view, you can do everything from SPRO. Now with SAP S4HANA, SAP is trying to make life simple for the consultants also. Okay, so in cloud, okay, why I'm saying in cloud, because in premise there are not much of guided configurations available today. But in cloud, again, I'm not saying all the configurations can be done using SAP Fiori, but some of the configurations are simplified, and you don't need to go for SPRO to do this configuration. Some of the configurations you can directly do from SAP Fiori, and that too in a good user interface. Okay, so that is called as a guided configuration. So today, what you do, you need to go to different SPRO screens to perform the end-to-end configuration. Now, guided in the sense, it will be easy to understand. Let's say, for example, if I want to configure the releasing strategy. So today I get confused with the terminologies like what is release category, what are the uh, this one, the authorization groups and all. So instead of that, it will directly ask you the relevant questions like
Hey, Gaurav. Hey, Gaurav. Hello. Hey, Gaurav.
Yes, just a minute. I'm not able to share my screen, so I'm just speaking to Krishna. There is some issue with the network, it seems. Just a minute.
Okay.
Yes, can you see the screen now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I was talking about the guided configuration. And as I told you, the guided configuration means the way in which the configurations can be carried out. It will be simplified by using the SAP Fiori screens. So as of today, not much of the screens are available on SAP Fiori, but going forward, this SAP Activate will also take care of the guided configuration. So as of today, whatever there are some few guided configurations available in the SPR in the SAP Fiori. I will show you some examples. Okay, and let's start off with the methodology because this is something which we need to understand in detail. This is anyways not in your control because the base practice content will be implemented by your solution manager guy because the SAP base practice content, like in ECC, it has to be via the activation of the base practice content, which will be installed separately on your system. Okay, but I'll give you the like I'll provide you the content, like where exactly you can find this, what are the different base practices available, how you can find the methodology content. We'll talk about all that things. Okay, so let's start off with the first slide. I think this slide is, now you are aware that there can be three different kind of projects that you will be working on in the real-time scenario. First is obviously the new implementation that you can see as the last project deployment option here. New implementation means your customer is not using SAP at all, or maybe even if he is already using SAP, he is not happy with his current SAP ERP system and he wants to start from scratch. So he's not worried about the existing custom objects and all. He is not totally happy with the current way of how SAP is configured and he wants to start everything from scratch. In that case only he will go for new implementation. Second is the system conversion, where the customer is already using SAP ECC system. He has lot of custom objects and he is okay to use the same system and implement the new scenarios that we understood in the last session. So he'll go for system conversion. And third kind of scenario can be when customer is using multiple SAP systems today. So it is not only one SAP system. Let's say customer is using three different SAP systems in three different regions. So system conversion is only possible when you are using a single system. If you want to move from one system, SAP ECC system to S4HANA, if you are only using one single system, then you can perform the system conversion. But if you are using multiple SAP systems, you cannot do the system conversion. That is the reason this landscape transformation is an option which will allow you to make the use of SAP S4HANA instantly by replicating the data from your current ERP systems to SAP S4HANA. Now, this is like a new implementation. This system that you are implementing, this is a new implementation. Only thing is, in case of new implementation, you are completely discarding these servers. So you'll be doing all your transactions in this new system. But in case of landscape transformation, you are implementing a new system in parallel to already existing systems, which means data will be uh, transactions will be done in these systems and they will be replicated in real time to this system so that you can perform reportings in this new system. Okay, so these are the three different scenarios that you will be working on. We already discussed the system conversion in detail in our last sessions, and we started out with the new implementation. For landscape transformation, as I told you, you need to configure this new system and this replication, how the data will move from here to here, that will be done by your SLT guy, which is landscape transformation. Okay, SAP has a tool called as landscape transformation, which will be used to perform this real-time movement of data from this system to this system. Otherwise, from the project approach point of view, it is same as a new implementation. So what is the methodology now? So before I talk about SAP Activate methodology, let's try to just uh, think about how SAP SF was working. So what are the different phases in SF methodology? First one was the initial preparation, in which before you start the actual project, whatever activities you do, they come into the initial preparation. And as soon as you physically start the project, start interacting with your business users, you enter into the business blueprinting phase. What is the output of business blueprinting? You come up with a blueprint document signed off, okay, which means you understood the business and finally you came up with a solution, and this solution has been signed off by the business. Once you get the business blueprinting sign off, you enter into the realization phase where you actually start working on the configurations, and if any Z developments are also required, you start working on those Z developments. And once you completed that, you enter into the final preparation where you perform different kind of tests. You create the cutover data plans, okay, testing everything from the user point of view, from integration point of view. All those testings, all that cutover plans are created in the final preparation, and then you decide one date and you go live. Now, in SAP Activate, obviously there cannot be much of changes. We are not saying this entire process has been changed. There are some steps which are eliminated. So for example, initial preparation, you cannot eliminate anything, because initial preparation is what? Initial preparation means from the project management point of view to get the resources ready. Okay, so what we do normally in initial preparation, we formally start a project, which is project kickoff. You finalize the team of consultants who are going to work on the project. You determine what resources will be required and make sure that before the business blueprinting phase starts, you have all the resources ready with the project plan. That is the initial preparation. So that thing is even required here also, which is part of nothing but prepare phase. Okay, in the prepare phase, whatever activities you were doing in initial preparation, all these activities will be required here also in the prepare phase. But there is one additional activity. I'll talk about that later on. First, let me talk about explore. Explore is very much similar to your business blueprinting phase, but only the from the understanding point of view is same. But when you enter into this phase, the way in which you conduct the requirement study and solutioning, that is completely different. So let me tell you the difference now. When you enter into the business blueprinting phase, what you normally do, you start off with understanding the current business as a study, right? You sit with the end user, you try to understand how they are doing their processes today in their current system without worrying about SAP. So you just try to understand, okay, how are you carrying out these activities? Okay, and this is all theoretical. So you invest around, again, it depends upon project to project, but let me take an example of 6 months project where you invest around 1.5 months on the business blueprinting. So let's say 1.5 months you are investing on business blueprinting phase. And out of this 1.5 month, at least 1 month, you are all on paper without anything on SAP, right? All on paper means you just try to understand how they are using their current system, and remaining 15 days you create a document in which you will tell them that how exactly the same things will be handled in SAP, right? So what happens when you submit the business blueprint document to the business? Normally, I think 80% of the times, the end users or the management, they are not able to understand the terminologies that you used in the document. Let's say, for example, you said, according to your business requirements, we will create 10 different company codes. We will create, let's say, 10 different purchasing organization and 3 different purchase groups, for example. Now, for them, the terminologies may be new. What are profit centers? What are cost centers? What are purchase organizations? What are purchasing groups? Okay, so it might be difficult for them to understand what you are trying to convey with the business blueprint document. So you end up in having the different kind of discussions with the customer, where they will clarify their doubts, where they will ask you what exactly do you mean by purchasing group, and finally, if they are not able to understand even after the discussions, they normally ask you, can you show us in the system how exactly these things will coordinate with each other? Any question? There is some background noise. Sandeep, do you have any question?
Sorry, I was muted. I'm good.
Okay, Sandeep, can you mute yourself? There is some background noise coming from your end.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, so what happens is, normally the customers, because they are not able to understand the terminologies that we used in the documents, they ask that it will be really good if you show us how exactly these things will happen in the SAP system. So can you show us one complete cycle? Then we'll be comfortable. Yes, whatever you have written in the document seems good. Even if customer doesn't ask, let's say a customer is also like, okay, as of now, but we will see how exactly the things will happen in the realization phase or UAT. So for example, let's say you submitted the document, and after some discussions, they have signed up the document. Now you started the realizations, you are in the UAT phase. And in the UAT, the customer is saying the way in which you written in the document, it was seeming that you are going to do like this, but now when we are seeing in the system, this is completely different. So there is a confusion here. You need to change it according to our requirements. So what is happening is, you are unnecessarily, if you in the realization phase, if they ask you to make some changes or something like that, it will be a lot of rework. Instead, if these things were highlighted in the business blueprinting itself, it would have been easy to incorporate that changes. Okay, so what is happening is, where is the gap? The gap is in the way how we perform the business blueprinting, because when we are performing the business blueprinting, everything is on paper, nothing is on the system. Okay, and here comes the agile. What does agile says? According to agile methodology, you do the level of reviews with the customer. Okay, it is like prototyping. So instead of showing the customer what you have done during the UAT directly, you should involve them in each and every phase of the project to make sure that the challenges or the miscommunications are highlighted well in advance, which will save your reworking activities. Okay. Again, Scrum Master is also like same. According to Scrum Master, you should have the regular interactions with your business user. Let's say every weekly. They call it as different sprints. What are sprints? Sprints are you take a subset of the activity that you are going to do, let's say in this week, and at the end of the week, you will show them whatever you have done till now, so that if there are any deviations, they are highlighted. So instead of, in short, why these terminologies are used? To make sure that the deviations are recognized as soon as possible in the project, which will reduce your rework activities. Keeping that in mind, now what SAP is suggesting is in Activate, instead of having the theoretical discussions with your business users, show them how SAP processes will interact on day one itself. So whenever you are visiting the customer for finalizing the solution, finalizing the design, you start with the workshops. And in the workshops, you don't ask them how you process this transaction and how exactly you carry out this process. Instead of that, you show them the SAP screens, SAP S4HANA system. You show them SAP S4HANA with end-to-end process. You tell them, okay, today we are going to discuss about, let's say, procurement. And this is how in SAP S4HANA, the procurement will take place. You show them the entire end-to-end process, like, okay, this is how the purchase requisition has to be created. This is how, based on the releasing strategy, it has to be released. This is how the RFQ is created. So you show them the SAP screens with which they will become comfortable with the terminologies also that you are using in SAP, and let them come if there are any deviations. So you shown them this is how the procurement to P2P process works in SAP. Now let them come and say, okay, we understood now how the standard SAP based practices are doing this end-to-end process, but we have some deviations. Like instead of, let's say, you've shown us this is how the releasing strategy will work, but we have some deviation. Instead of this, we want to execute like this. So these are some of the things that you will come up after the workshop. So after the workshop, you will come up with a document. As a consultant, you will come up with a document which will tell, okay, I've shown them this process, and out of these processes are fit to the business requirement exactly as it is. So the way in which the purchase requisition is created, there is no deviation. Customer has agreed. He will continue the same thing in SAP also. And in terms of releasing strategy, this is some of the deviation that I identified. And again, you need to sit with your technical team to find out, or maybe even not technical is required. You need to make some configuration changes and it can suit his business requirements. So you need to specify that the way in which I shown him, this is not acceptable. They have this deviation, plus the solution, whatever it is. If it is some Z development or maybe a standard solution, you just need to incorporate that. So let's say you shown them 10 different processes. Out of these 10 processes, 7 are fit as it is without any change. So you highlighted that 2 processes can be configured or some Z developments can be done to make sure that the way in which they want will be configured. So 7 plus 2 equal to 9, and 1 process, the way in which they want, this is not possible. Even from the Z developments, it is not suggested, it is not recommended. So that is called as a gap identification in the system. So this will be the gap when you compare your existing system with SAP system. Now, how to resolve that gap? Again, you need to have another round of discussion to discuss about the gaps. So you'll tell them, okay, you are asking for this, but this is not recommended at all. Instead of that, if you are ready to change your process according to SAP based practices, that will be good. So what I'm saying is you identify the gaps, but these gaps needs to be resolved. I'm not saying that these gaps will always remain as it is. Whatever gaps you identified, you need to discuss on those gaps. You need to propose the solution, whether it can be filled with the standard business process, or it will be done via some Z development, or maybe customer has agreed to change the business process. Whatever you are discussing in the workshops, you will come up with fit gap analysis document. Instead of business blueprinting, okay, don't go with the name. You can still call that document as a business blueprint, no problem. You can call it a design document, you can call it as a fit gap analysis document, you can call it as a solution document. Forget about the terminologies what you use for the documentation. Okay, but one thing for sure, it must highlight the fits, like whatever has been agreed, which will be used as it is. And you also need to highlight the gaps for which you are not able to provide the solution as of today. Okay, so that is called as a fit gap analysis document. Now, if you submit this fit gap analysis document to your user, it will be much much easier for him to understand what you have highlighted in the document. And he will be in much better position to sign off the document with exact clarity what exactly is written in that. Okay, and the chances of rework when he will actually test the system are lesser because he knows the terminologies now. He knows how the processes works. So this is one addition in the explore phase. Instead of having the theoretical discussions, SAP is recommending that conduct the workshops with the end users, involve them in all the phases of the project to make sure that there are no reworks needs to be done at the later stages. Now, obviously, if you want to do that, you need a system in which you will be showing them how SAP works. And definitely at this moment, we are not expecting customer will be having the licenses to their system, which you can use to demonstrate. So you need a demo system, right? Now this demo system is available to most of the big companies. Okay, it is provided by SAP as a cloud version, which can be used for this kind of projects. And also the cloud trial version is available, but again, that is not full-fledged. So the system that you will be using is the cloud system, which is provided by SAP to the consulting partners. And also IDS, I heard it is already available, I think now. So if IDS available, then you can definitely use IDS server also to demonstrate the processes of SAP S4HANA. And because you need this system, I told you one activity will be added in the prepare phase is nothing but making sure that the system is ready, which will be used for explore phase. So in the preparation phase, apart from the normal project management planning activities, the resources and all, you need to consider the server also, which will be used in the explore phase. Okay, so in the prepare phase, no change. Whatever activities you carry out, you will do, plus one additional activity of making sure the server is ready. Explore phase, completely different. Although the purpose is same, to understand the business requirements and to provide the design document, but the way in which you are doing this particular thing, that has been completely changed. No theoretical discussions, everything on by showing them the SAP system so that they become comfortable with SAP screens. Okay, that is in the explore phase. Finally, realize, deploy, no change. Realization means what? You actually start configuring the system. Now, when you are actually starting configuring the system, there are two options. You start from scratch or you activate the base business practices. So these base business practices are available from Solution Manager. You can activate the base business practices and then you can use them to copy your company codes into your project. Or if you want to start from scratch, you can do that. SAP obviously recommends to go with the base business practices. Is final preparation. It is like a final preparation where you perform, create the user manuals, you do the trainings to the end users, and finally you start. Now we discussed about flow, realize, deploy, and phase that you can see. Discover is